Hello, guys. This is my Baltimore Ravens 7 round mock draft. Obviously, earlier today we did the Seahawks, 7 round mock, and now we're doing another bird team. A lot of bird teams lingering around lately, to be honest with you, but I don't mind it. The bird is the word. The Ravens are kind of an interesting team. I think there's a plethora of ways they could go. I mean, they're a Super Bowl ready team right now. I do think that they need an edge. That's kind of one of the, maybe my biggest need for them is inflicting pressure. Obviously, that defense, they're keeping the same defensive coordinator. They fixed things after their bye last year. So it's like their defense to me really doesn't need, that much help, type of thing. But it's like, we'll look at their depth chart anyway. And, we'll kind of psychoanalyze, what's going on with their team. They obviously signed D-Hop, and then they have Bateman Flowers, as we all know. And just kind of a lot of unknowns back here. I do think that they still draft a wide receiver in this draft. I think that, Bateman and Flowers are, Bateman's not like short, but Flowers is obviously your bona fide slot guy. And it's like, and then you have, D-Hop, I think he'll be a guy to kind of mentor these dudes. Not that they really need it. I mean, Bateman, I think has been stepping up, with him being healthy. Zay Flowers, sucks that he got injured because I really think this is a team that could have potentially went to the Super Bowl if he was playing, And then you look at the O-line. Stanley's solid. They bring him back. Voorhees, when he's healthy, obviously. Voorhees, Linderbaum, one of the top young centers in the league. Daniel Falele, good. And, Roger Rosengarten. I think that you still draft, some O-line as contingency, and that sort of thing, whether it's on the left or right side, but then you look at, tight end. I don't really, unless they do move on from Mark Andrews, I don't think that they draft a tight end. I think Isaiah Likely proved Lamar Jackson trusts him and, that sort of thing. And then it's like you look at, their running back room. Clearly, Henry hasn't lost a step with age, and he's still a very dominant beast. Justice Hill, spark plug of a player. Love what he brings to the team, and he was just doing very, very good things for them. Even in third and longs, when it's like you dump it off to him, and it's like if he makes one guy miss, he's gone for like 10 yards. Now looking at the defense, like I said, Broderick Washington, Travis Jones, Mandabik, and then it's like, and then you have the outside. Van Noy is still just such a stud, and does a lot of good things and is a smart, savvy veteran player, Trent Simpson, Roquan Smith, maybe get a linebacker in the draft here type of thing. Tavius Robinson, I at some point I kind of expected Odafe Owe to really make that jump as a first round pick in 21 to take this spot as one of their edge rushers, but he just hasn't. Nate Wiggins, solid. Safety, strong safety is maybe something that we'll look at, for them. Marlon Humphrey, obviously crazy solid. It seemed to find a better spot for him last year, where it's like he's just, bullying these, slot corners. Awuzie, I really, really like. Tennessee's defense was, exposed later in the season, but I think it was just lack of, being able to get off, not off the field, due to the fact that they were on the field because of the offense so much, not the fact that they couldn't perform, if that makes any sense, type of thing. But it's like, I like this. They might add a corner just for depth. They're obviously kind of shallow on corner, type of thing. So it's like corner, safety, edge, potentially, defensive interior, I think, for Travis Jones, type of thing. And then wide receiver and O-line. Let's see how many picks they have, and we'll kind of go from there. They do have a lot of picks. It's kind of wild to me that some of these teams with not a lot of holes have a lot of picks, but, we'll start the draft and we'll see who's available here. I think this might surprise a lot of people. But I personally think, like, looking at what is what is going on ahead of them. I think you're foolish not to take Starks. You have Starks and Hamilton, one of the best tandems of safeties type of thing. And it's like, and then we even get to the second round. Some of these picks, we're looking at some of them. So it's like, let's look at edge right here. I think that, Jared Ivory couldn't go wrong with. Not as high of a pass rush win rate as you would want, but also has a solid run defense, which I know that they value. Is a very big guy, here to rush the end, type of thing. But it's like, you could also look at Kennard, who's obviously a bit more lean, but lengthy, athletic build, with that doesn't have, a crazy run defense grade, and his run defense rate is low. Is he a guy you look for as an every down sort of dude? We could look at Josiah Stewart. I think it's crazy how he's, not rated higher type of thing. Did have good production last year and keeps on getting better. Good run stop, run rate, run defense, pass rush type of thing. He actually seems like a guy that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to draft to this team. I think that they value very much stopping the run a lot, and you need to be able to play that, Moving to this round, we're kind of going to look at, who, so we have 91 and then 129 type of thing. I think, that looking here, we've got a number of, players available that it's kind of like, oh, we could, go this way, that way. Would Cameron Williams be a guy, for right tackle? Obviously didn't play very much, his first 2 years, didn't grade well. Let up some sacks there, I guess, type of thing. But in 900 some snaps, I think, playing for a big school, obviously, not doing well against some of the bigger teams. Maybe we do look elsewhere. Trey Harris, I just drafted to the Seahawks. Think this is, more than an applicable pick for the Baltimore Ravens. And it's like they have picks to spare. I am going to have them sign this man as kind of their taller guy, that like gives another kind of big target for Lamar Jackson. Looking here, I see Mello Dotson, right away out of Kansas. Kansas always has kind of a special spot in my heart, I'm not going to lie, in terms of their players. I think that, I think that, looking at this man, he's very scrappy. Man coverage grade is very solid type of thing. And it's like, besides, his first year where he was playing, I guess he was playing the same, he really kind of stepped it up and has been doing better with a very low QBA. We're actually going to go, Dotson here because for corner depth, because I don't think he'll have to start right away, and he'll have the ability to learn under a great DB room. Moving on to late round 4. I'm kind of looking here in the picks we've made. We've drafted a lot of, or I guess, a lot of defense and not so much offense, but I haven't really seen the kind of linemen that I would like, for this team, if I'm being honest with you. It's kind of like looking here. I'm actually kind of leaning towards Jack Kaiser as, a very good value pick. Maybe this guy could play, alongside Roquan at some point. Is a lighter guy, but you have Roquan, who's already kind of that dude. Bring this guy in who has solid starting experience, and we can look for O-line in the later rounds. Logan Brown right here, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say yes, please. Yes, please, if I am this team. He obviously got his first full year of starting this last year, and, did a very good job. Only 6 hurries. Obviously we can't look at these stats from the prior 2 years. Obviously, looking at the snaps here, he was kind of rough a little bit in, his first year there, but we're going to go with him. And I think that that's a very solid, thing to look at I've noticed we have John Williams here. We have Ty Felton, Jack Nelson. Defensive interior is kind of an interesting thing. Dante Thorne Jr. at wide receiver if they wanted to double down, which I think that they will double down on wide receiver, to be honest with you, just to get more guys into that room. Jake Majors, he's a center. Jay Higgins, I would say to go if we hadn't gotten Kaiser, earlier. It's kind of one of those things that it's like I'm looking here. Oh, Ricky White is here. I like Ricky White. I think it's a little too early to pick him up. So it's like a lot of production, obviously, for him. Did very, very well a year prior, and then, solid above 1,000, but Pollard had more touchdowns type of thing, and it's like can play slot wide and that sort of thing, in either sort of spot. And a good yards per route run, big chunk guy, and I think that that's one of the things that they value. So looking at Ricky White, sorry, I do think he'd be there for the next pick. So we're kind of not really looking at him right now. I think we drafted a corner. We've drafted. I think looking here. Perhaps we do take another lineman, which I think, would be interesting. Would Jonah Monheim be able to slide out to guard as well? He's a very good size for guard. And swing roll type of thing. We're going to go Monheim, here. And then we're going to go down and we're, at this spot. And then we're going to look at Ricky White. Obviously, it's still a little bit early. We do have a pick at 210, but you just you go and you grab your guy because you're not really. I mean, was there anything else that was truly available there that was like, hey, this guy's not going to be here and we need him type of thing? I think we could add another corner. I just worry about the depth that they have, and that's obviously always a concern. And we have Jason Marshall. Craig Woodson, I'm pretty sure, has also played in the slot. Maybe someone, that like you move around type of thing is a very good size. I'm actually going to say Craig Woodson, right here. We obviously have a pick right after, and then, another pick in 30 type of thing. I'm thinking shore up the D-line. I think Cam Horsley is a guy that, good pass rush run rate for a dude who's not a pass rusher. 8% isn't terrible. Run stop very high. I think this guy screams and looks like he could play on the D-line as maybe a developmental, and they can get a little bit younger there because I know that a lot of their guys, looking here, it's like, I mean, I guess Travis Jones is a little bit younger, but and I guess they did move on from, I think what's his face retired. Maybe I am just kind of, out of sorts on who they have right there, to be honest with you. We have this last pick. We've obviously addressed, quite a bit of positions of need, type of thing. I'm kind of thinking that like right here, you take the best available, and it's like, I know that they don't like to blitz on this team. So it's like, would they go and grab a guy that's maybe they grab another halfback? I know that it's always, these teams contingencies, and we only have two halfbacks remaining in a stacked running back class. We'll see if they have kind of the size that I like, and it's like Donovan Edwards, didn't get a ton of attempts, but had steady production. Had this, I guess, a ridiculous average, a couple of years ago, but did get some TDs. I don't think he's who we're looking at here. I think we are kind of looking at Raheem Sanders, the Gamecocks, South Carolina. did very solid this last year. Didn't play, was a little injured the year prior, but had a good year, a few years ago type of thing. And it's like, it's going to be 23, but 6'2", 230, definitely kind of your pounder sort of guy. And it's like, can definitely catch the ball a little bit, which, we have Justice Hill and we have Derrick Henry, who's not going to catch it very much. But it's like having a guy like this who shows that he's got some ability, all over the place, I think very valuable in the later rounds in 7. And we're going to draft halfback. Not that Derrick Henry, I don't think he's going to get injured. I think he has one of the sturdiest players, and I think that they were very smart with him and not running him, a lot. Obviously, he could have had a lot more yards, type of thing. They do say to draft Demetrius Knight, but I honestly think that with Jack Kaiser, I think Kaiser is a guy that, why wouldn't we want this guy, type of thing. We got some really good grades, Starks, Dotson, Trey Harris. Oh, Josiah Stewart's still a B grade type of thing. I guess they didn't like, overall draft grade, I guess is A minus. The A plus must have really like boosted up the average type of thing. But it's like, I think that all these positions are kind of positions of need that you could address. I think that, yeah, you double down on safety, but you got a guy who's come in and, can be a menace, at numerous different things, but really to me, God goodness, the Ravens can obviously address, a lot of their needs, and it's like, who knows where they're really going to go, where they feel like the need is in this draft type of thing. And it's like, I never feel like you can have enough depth on your D line type of thing. And Horsley, value pick, Ricky White, a guy who could, potentially see time, and that sort of thing. Monheim, I think solid center. And it's just like overall a lot of good value picks around here to be like guys that are at least, rotational, that you can plug in or are going to give you some contingency, and that sort of thing. I know we didn't go DB besides Dotson, and you still probably would want, more DBs because you have, what is this, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then you would have 6. I think that that's fine, but it's like, you get a couple injuries and you start having a guys come off the bench and it's, you're panicked, you're worried, with DBs, and then it's like, these teams are like, oh, we'll target the heck out of this guy. We'll target the heck out of this guy. Even suffering one DB injury can really, be bad for a team. But if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, tell me what you think about this, whether or not you think it is, a draft that, with players that, you could see in a Ravens uniform potentially, and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. But as always, go Pack, go.